Good morning.
Good morning.
The talk today is called Atheists Want It. We're spiritual, not religious. And the idea behind it is that we don't require that anybody believe anything particularly, with one tiny little exception, and certainly none of the God languages that many religions require. I'll open with a confession. When I was 12, I became an agnostic. I wasn't an atheist because I had commitment issues. And I considered myself an agnostic with a belief system, but there was nothing that it fit into until I was in my early 30s, and I found my spirituality and went into a series of spiritual communities. And so The Atheists Want It is kind of about my process and my path, but it's also about how all of us are connected together. So the promise for today is that there will be no God talk. We will not have any of the religion languaging of God. And in fact, I have recruited my woo-woo monitor, Reverend Dave, and actually I'm going to co-opt all of you. If I talk about anything that seems to be religious God language, please interrupt me and say, "Yo, Reverend Bill, what's going on there? I thought you weren't going to talk about God," or however it is that you want to phrase it.
I can't do many.
We're kind of casual about this. So in your program, on the front of it, the thing that we start every Sunday with, we say, "We believe that there is one creative power in the universe that creates everything, including each of us, and that we each use that same creative power to create our life." That's the belief here. That's basically what we're agreeing upon, and it doesn't mention God, it mentions a creative power. It does not say what it is. It just says that it exists. So we're going to talk about how we can have that spiritual experience without going through the steps that are prescribed by a lot of religions. So we'll start the way that we start a lot of things. Take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Notice that was relatively comfortable and felt kind of like most of the other breaths that we've taken. I'll get back to that in a couple of minutes. Religion, as opposed to spirituality, tells us who the Creator is, tells us what the Creator wants, gives the Creator a name, gives us all sorts of instructions about how we can worship the Creator, how we can honor the Creator, how we can do what the Creator has told us that the Creator wants us to do. In our New Thought spiritual practice, we don't care. We don't care what you call the Creator. We don't care what somebody else says that we should do. It's the difference between when somebody is dancing, they go to Arthur Murray and they put the little numbers on the floor, and you step to this one and that one and this one over here and then back and over there. And somebody gets so busy counting and watching the steps that they're not feeling the music. And that can be religion. In spirituality, it's about finding the groove and getting connected and feeling it yourself. But more than that, it's not just philosophical. It's not a theory about how the universe works, about how these things come together. It is immensely practical. It is a scientific practice. Scientists, their business, their work is about studying how the natural laws of the universe work and understanding how the pieces fit together, and then advancing our knowledge so that we understand how those pieces fit together. It's then up to the engineers to figure out how we can use that. The philosophical part is great, and we can talk about that all the time, but the practical piece is the engineering piece. As the philosophers, as the teachers, as the great masters have come through and they have pointed out how things work, what that's given the rest of us is some pretty clear instructions about how we can create the life that we want to create. There's one creative power in the universe that creates everything, including each of us, and we each use that same creative power to create our lives. That's pretty powerful. We can use that same creative power that creates all of this to create something new for ourselves. Spirituality is in a lot of ways mysterious. There's some mystery involved. We don't know the answers. Our lives are divided into a timeline. There's the historical part, the stuff that's already happened. There's now, this moment, this breath, this activity that we're involved in at this time. And then there's the future. As far as the future is concerned, we don't know what the future holds. We like to figure it out. We like to have an idea that we can put together some understanding of how things have happened in the past and manipulate, control, or influence what's going to happen to us in the future. And we can, to a certain extent. That's great. But the future is a mystery because we don't know. The difference between each of us on a localized level and the infinite, that creative power that created everything, is that we don't know what's going to happen next, or after that, or after that, or after that. And in the big picture, where all of the pieces are put together, where everything is possible, that's all locked down. I'll give you an example. Anybody here play chess? Chess is a fun game. Black pieces, white pieces. You line up, somebody makes a move, somebody else makes a move, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know how many opening sequences there are in chess? That's like the first set of moves that sets up how the 495. There are 495 opening combinations in chess. In the game of Go, there are even more. So what happens in the game of chess is as the game gets started, the players on either side are trying to figure out which of those 495 to use, how to respond, how to react, so that they can get through the game and they can become the winner. They can be victorious at the end of the game. The game of checkers has far fewer opening moves, which is why a lot of people consider checkers not to be nearly as challenging as chess or Go. You ever play tic-tac-toe? You know how many opening moves there are in tic-tac-toe? 3. Middle, corner, edge. Because as you rotate the board around, it doesn't make any difference. There are 3 possible opening moves. And if you play tic-tac-toe long enough, you realize that you can make one of those opening moves, and based on the second move, you're either going to win or draw. Which is why tic-tac-toe is not an Olympic sport. In fact, it's used a lot for teaching kids about sportsmanship and about an introduction to strategy games. When my daughter was really little, we played tic-tac-toe for a while. And then at one point we were in the car and she was bored. She says, I want to do something. I said, let's play tic-tac-toe. She says, okay. I said, top left. We'd never played in our heads before. She goes, middle, middle. She just picked it up because it's that natural and that easy and that automatic to understand how the pieces are going to fit together. But it's not that exciting a game. Another deep breath in. Deep breath out. When we understand what the end of the game is going to look like, the game becomes much less interesting. That's from our perspective. That's from our perspective as we're going through it. We are limited by our 5 senses. We can smell and taste and touch and see and understand things, but we don't have that whole big, huge picture. We are part of that, whatever that creative process is, whatever has brought us into being, we're all part of it. Getting a little woo here, not going to do any God stuff. We are all part of it, and I'll explain that we actually are all connected in just a second. But we're having an individual experience of it. Now, when you took that breath in, both of them, actually all of them that you've been doing all along, do you know what you're breathing in? Anybody?
Your
Air. Right, we're breathing. You know what air is composed of?
Oxygen, nitrogen.
Argon.
Mostly
Nitrogen.
nitrogen. It's about 79% nitrogen, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% argon. Now, be honest. When's the last time you thought about argon?
Crossword puzzle.
It's like,
About a year ago.
yeah, the last time I did the argon talk. Argon? What's argon? Nobody knows about argon. Nobody cares about argon. Nitrogen, that's what's used for fixing the soils that plants grow. It's like there's a nitrogen process that goes on. Oxygen, obviously we know that we need oxygen because that's what does the transfer in our cells. So we need to oxygenate our blood to keep our tissues alive. So we know about the nitrogen, we know about the oxygen, but here's this argon. Where does it come from? How do we get argon? Anybody know? Turns out that when somebody has a tank of argon and it's used for some industrial processes because it is possibly the most inert gas in the world, it doesn't do anything. it is like your lazy uncle lying on the couch. I mean, the argon, nothing. It doesn't react with anything. It doesn't turn into anything. It's not at all. I first found out about argon when I was a scuba diver because when people are doing deep technical diving, they fill their dry suit up with argon because it's a great insulator because it just doesn't do anything. The only way to get a tank of argon is to start with air and distill it so that it turns into argon and nitrogen and oxygen. And that way you get a bottle of argon. But it's by taking it out of the air. If you want to make argon, the only way to make it is by the radioactive decay of potassium. You know how long that takes? For a piece of potassium to turn into a half a piece of potassium and an equal amount of argon? 1.25 billion years. So making argon, the recipe takes 1.25 billion years. Again, deep breath in, deep breath out. 1% of that breath is argon. And that argon that you just breathed in has been around for billions and billions of years. So it's possible that the recorded history that we have in Scripture that goes back 6,000 or maybe 7,000 years is correct, but that's not the creation story because where'd the argon come from? P.S. I know it's there, I just breathed it in. All of recorded history, all the way back that 6,000 years, everybody on the planet, every creature, has been breathing the same argon for the entire timeline. Everything that's ever happened for as far back as we know has been the same particles of argon. We have been trading them back and forth amongst ourselves. Does that matter? Maybe not. I don't know. Has anybody ever seen argon? Yeah, I've never seen argon. It's a colorless, odorless, inert gas. The closest I can come to seeing argon is if somebody takes it and puts it into a tube and electrifies the tube like like one of those neon lights, but instead of neon, it's argon, and it's kind of purple and purple lilac color. But that's not the argon. That's the electricity interacting with the argon. Why am I talking about this? It's because even though we can't see it, it's still there. We can't see gravity, but gravity is there. Does anybody doubt that gravity exists? Okay. How about electricity? Have you seen electricity? Only when you spark it, in which case it's not electricity, it then turns into light. Okay? Same thing with magnetism. Now, I've taken little iron filings and I've held them on a piece of paper with the magnet behind it, and I've seen the magnetic field. But that's not the magnetic field. That's me seeing the shape of the magnetic field by looking at iron filings. Never seen magnetism either, but I believe it exists. The evidence that we're taking from this is that everything is coming from some natural law. In the same way that the laws of gravity can be understood and explained, the laws of aerodynamics can be understood and described the same way that the laws of electricity and electromagnetism can be used to do things like power the city or a Tesla. Once we understand, once the scientists tell us how these things work, then the engineers, the people who are applying these ideas in practical form, can do something with them. The Wright brothers, we've talked about this before, they didn't invent flight. They built a machine that flew. Flight was always possible. Wireless communication has always been possible. The iPhone has always been possible. It just took an understanding of how the materials technology and communication technology and the rest of it, the science, to become advanced enough that we could apply it and have an iPhone and a meaningless conversation while we're standing in line at the supermarket behind somebody else. We're on that timeline. The stuff that's happened, the history, the stuff that's going on right now, and the future. And we have the excitement of not knowing how it's coming out. But what we can do is we can use the same creative process that makes anything possible to create that next outcome. How do we do it? We look at all of the evidence about how everything is created. The first step in the creative process is to have the idea and the intention to create something. It is then to let loose that intention without any hesitation or doubt, and to allow the laws of the universe, which we have come to understand, to act upon the intention. But aren't you talking about God there? Isn't that what this is all about? Let's keep it out of the God reference language. Some of the smartest, most creative people I know are in recovery. And they're not in recovery because they're smart and creative people. What happened is, being smart and creative people, they were able to figure out how to manage their lives and control events and control circumstances in such a way that they got themselves boxed into a corner or at the bottom of a very deep hole, where all of the maneuvering and all of the shifting and finagling wasn't working anymore. And it was a problem. Reverend Dave, you can correct me if I'm mistaken in any of this.
Yeah, right.
Welcome to. And the recovery process is all about acknowledging that there is a higher power. There's something bigger going on. It's not about needing to find religion. It's about needing to acknowledge that there is a bigger something underway. It's about understanding that in the middle of a chess game, it's not just the next move that I'm making. It's not just about how I've been playing the game. It's about, this is the board, this is the rules, this is how the whole game of chess was created. And I'm now free to make the next move in my game. Yeah, I've taken all of the steps up till this point on the path, but that doesn't mean the next step has to be the same. It's that realization that I can turn the control over to something that's bigger than me, or something that's not me, something that we're connected to, and allow that next step to happen in a different way. One of the greatest minds of history, Albert Einstein, said that we can't solve a problem at the same level of energy where we created the problem. What he's talking about is a higher level of thinking. Emma Curtis Hopkins, the mystical teacher, says that that's holding the high watch. It's about shifting to that higher perspective. If there were something good unfolding now, what would that look like? And being able to take ourselves out of the momentary situation to that higher perspective. The spiritual laws that we found, which are very practical. There's a law of attraction. When our consciousness is aware of something, when we are intending something, we tend to attract that into our lives. If we're looking for problems, we find problems. If we're looking for love, we find love. And it's not just what we say we're looking for, it's what we're actually looking for. It's about our belief system. Yeah, aren't you talking about God now? Isn't that getting kind of into religion and stuff like that? Ooh. It's a little woo-woo. But it's actually not, because it's very practical. Because it works. Because we can prove that it works. Because we have story after story after story of how it works and that it does work. So a healthy skepticism is very helpful, especially if you're an atheist. If you're an atheist coming into this with no belief system whatsoever, go with that. That's why in our Beyond Limits class, the first thing we advise people to pray for are parking spaces and green lights, because it doesn't matter. I'm going to get the parking space, I'm not going to get the parking space, I'm going to see all green lights or I'm going to get some red lights. It doesn't matter. But as soon as we get ourselves in alignment, where we've got that law of attraction working, where we are attracting that easy flow, that parking space, it doesn't matter. All the parking spaces in the city already exist. It's not about there being a parking space, it's about there being an empty one when I get to it. And it's not about them all being empty all the time. I just need one person to be pulling out when I'm pulling in. Do you think whoever it was that built the chessboard cares whether white or black wins? When I'm playing white, I care. But that's my experience while I'm playing chess. It has nothing to do with the overall picture of the game. So when we play, we do our best to play well. We want to win. We want to just win? No, actually, we have a lot of philosophy and a lot of feeling and a lot of ethics about it. I want to win. I don't want to win by cheating. I want to win honestly. I want to win fairly. I want to win by excelling. I want to win by having everybody be lifted up by that same winning experience. I don't want the winning team to need a losing team. I think we can all be on the same winning team. That's the philosophy. But the practice is we get to set an intention, and put it loose into the same laws that have been making airplanes fly and turning some people into winners and other people into losers in chess games, setting that same process in motion to allow something new into our lives. It's a wonderful movie, City of Angels. And there's a line in it where they say, when something's true, it doesn't matter whether you believe it. Or they say, if it's true, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. And on the one hand, that's completely true. When something is true, capital T, truth, it doesn't matter whether we believe it. But what matters even more is when we believe it, it can become true, little t, for us. So claim you're good. Set your intention for what you want to bring into your life, and you can do it. Because you deserve it. Because you're wonderful. So it is.